Hi, good afternoon. I'm Leslie Wolf, InterDrone's conference producer, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for this webinar. So today's topic is hybrid geospatial data collection and its benefits, and it's presented by our speakers, Bill Swope and Rusty Steele. So before we get started, I've just got a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So listening to the webcast, obviously make sure that you're unmuted and that your volume is turned up. If you're having any issues, you can always click on the little question mark and it should help you troubleshoot. And then if that's not fixing any audio issues that you're having, we do recommend sometimes leaving the webinar and then re-logging back in. That should fix any issues that you're having. Okay, asking questions. So you should see on the bottom of your screen a box, and you can type any questions you might have into the box. Any questions having to do with technical issues, you can also type into that box. And we have staff who are live and ready to help you out with any problems you're having. And questions will likely be answered at the end during the Q&A session, but it's also possible that during the presentation, our speakers will be able to answer your questions as well. All right, so today we're joined by Bill Swope, Geospatial and Survey Business Development Manager for Halff Associates, and Rusty Steele, Geospatial Team Leader. So Bill, I can hand it over to you now to get us started.
Okay, thanks very much, Leslie. Hopefully everybody can hear everything I'm saying okay, and we're doing good. But I want to thank everybody for joining us here today to talk about things and being with us here at InterDrone. And thanks to InterDrone for having us in as well. Yeah, so we're going to start off with today. I'm going to ask a couple of questions here for everyone just to get an idea of who we've got on and where everyone's at. So we'll do a little survey here. The survey questions are, and you can start responding. It looks like we're getting some responses already. Where are you calling from, or what region are you calling from? So trying to get an idea of where in the United States you're calling in from. And then also, what is your experience in using geospatial data collection? Again, just trying to get a feel of what folks have experienced with it so far, who's using it out there, and kind of where you're calling in from. We'll give a couple of minutes here to get some responses sliding in. All right, I can see some of the responses now here. So we've got a lot of people from the southern region, and up in the Northeast and Midwest, and out in the West is coming in now. So good to see you all. And as far as your experience with using geospatial data collection, looks like we're falling into the category of some, although we've got some people that have a lot of use with it, so that's good. And then a fair amount of folks, about 33% here anyway so far, saying that they haven't had any experience with geospatial data collection. Okay, good, interesting stuff. Good to see here. And we'll get moving on with the presentation. So again, my name is Bill Swope, and I'm with Halff Associates. I'm the Survey and Business Development Manager here at Halff. And just to give you a little information about Halff itself, our firm is located in Richardson, Texas, at least our headquarters are. And we're in 5 states right now, and we've got 24 offices, so our footprint's getting a little bit bigger across the West and the Southwest and the Southeast there. And so we have a number of practices or services that we offer here at Halff. So we're kind of a full service civil architectural firm. And our geospatial and surveying groups are together. The geospatial group falls under the survey practice here at Halff. So to give you some information about what we're going to get into today here, I wanted to talk first of all about what geospatial services are. I would think that most of folks know what those are, but I wanted to touch base on it real quickly here. And the way that we're going to define it for today, at least anyway, is we're going to be talking mostly about mobile LiDAR and terrestrial LiDAR data collection, manned aerial photogrammetry and LiDAR, and then also small unmanned aerial systems, or small UAS or drones. So very relevant for the webinar here today. And what is really driving the use of geospatial services? Because in the past years, past couple of years in particular, it's really picked up across the nation, across the world. The short answer to that is going to be the advancements in technology. And I've just got some graphics here to kind of highlight the aerial portion of the geospatial services. With photogrammetry, you know, back around the turn of the century, we were in balloons actually collecting data with the cameras. Around World War I, they were using photogrammetry in biplanes. We eventually progressed into the small aircraft, or the Cessna that's pictured there. And then today, we've jumped into drones. So in a short span of time, just the method for the aerial portion of geospatial services has accelerated, and we've come a long way in a short period of time. The impact of drones is another thing that is on a lot of people's minds and in the public sphere today. The FAA estimates that there'll be more than 450,000 commercial drones in service in 2020. And the interesting thing about this fact is that the original estimate that the FAA had for 450,000 drones in commercial service in the US was for 2024. So in a short amount of time, again, the use of drones has expanded quite a bit. More on the impact here. So these are potential uses for commercial drones in different sectors. And right now we're seeing, and these are put out here by some analysts that were looking at a span of about 5 years. And so the construction industry, as you can see, is really into the drone usage right now, and that's approaching, and these numbers are in the billions of dollars down there. So approaching about $12 billion, followed by agriculture, and then also the insurance industry. To note is kind of further down the graph here, some of the areas that we're working in professional services. So with utilities, into mining and pipeline. So there's a lot of area for expansion and a lot of commercial space for the use of drones to increase in the next few years. So Barclays analysts have estimated again here now the global drone market is going to grow quite a bit over the next 5 years. So from the years spanning 2019 to 2024, about a tenfold increase, going from $4 billion to $40 billion. So again, it's something that is picking up steam, and again, because of that technology. Another feature about that is the same analysts are saying that not only is there going to be an increased usage of drones, but that use of drones is going to result in the savings of some $100 billion. So again, a very large impact that drones are having on professional services. And these are estimated sales then done by Goldman Sachs and some research. And this is, again, drone usage among various sectors. So we can see the military is already vested in drones, as is the consumer market, which is looking to be almost tapped out. But the commercial or civil market, which encompasses professional services, is on the lower levels here still. And so again, we're looking for a lot of growth in the next few years as far as drones and professional services go. So another geospatial service that we're including today in this talk about hybrid data and fusion data is the impact of mobile LiDAR. Mobile LiDAR usage has been increasing. In Texas, where we're at, TxDOT features mobile LiDAR in almost all their projects to supplement the aerial photogrammetry that they use as well. So the Transportation Research Board has done some research into the applications for mobile LiDAR usage, and this is just kind of a small list here for you to have a look at. But as you can see, it's growing into different spheres, and there's a lot of new markets are being opened up as we can kind of visualize and get creative with the usage that we have for mobile LiDAR, the data that can be collected with it. And even when we're talking about terrestrial LiDAR or, scanning, 3D scanning as it's sometimes referred to, again, large advances and movement in this sector as well. We have a few of the different types of terrestrial-based scanners that you see out there. to note is one that's in the middle here down at the bottom is the Leica BLK, which is literally a handheld scanner that's kind of new on the market and is getting a lot of attention. And then up in the top left here, I've got a picture. That is actually of the sensor systems on the new Apple iPads, because the iPad Pro now is coming with a LiDAR sensor included with it. So we're seeing this explosion of new technologies even going into your iPad at this point. And what is the common ground, or what's the common feature that's going to make it applicable for all of these different geospatial data collection methods to come together? And simply put, that's the point cloud data that they all have as a characteristic. Whether it's the small unmanned aerial systems, or the drones, the mobile LiDAR systems, or the terrestrial-based scanning, it's that point cloud data that makes it possible for us to bring that data together and put together hybrid data sets that are collected via the various methods. And makes it very efficient when we go out to collect that data as well, because now we have the flexibility to choose the correct type of data collection method that's going to suit the project best. And lastly here, before I turn things over to Rusty to get in some specific information about how we're fusing this data together, is the fact of data mining. And this is something that we talk to a lot of our municipal clients about. So with these different types of data collection methods, it's now become easy and accessible to go out and do one data collection and use it for various projects. I've got a list of just the different types of applications that you can use for the various geospatial services that we're talking about here. So they range everything from topographic mapping all the way down to ADA compliance, or we're getting into building information modeling for architects. So the whole explosion of this technology is reaching into more and more spheres in the professional service sector. And every day we're talking to different clients about different types of projects. And that's where we kind of get to the point where Rusty's going to pick up here now, talk about how we look to fuse these different data collection methods into one package that we can deliver to our clients that they can use for the project that they need. I'll turn it over to Rusty Steele now.
Thanks, Bill. As Bill and I have discussed in the past, new topics that cover beyond just general feedback on drones and geospatial equipment, and the what he was just speaking about, the data mining, is one that we're kind of excited about, and we both hope to do something on that soon. And the other one is what we're going to speak about today, whether you want to call it a project with hybrid data or data fusion. Doing my research into data fusion, one area that I don't want us to get confused on, but it definitely relates, is oftentimes we're collecting not just point cloud, but imagery data. And one of them is multispectral. And one of our great technicians here at Halff, DJ, is working on using multispectral imagery and point cloud imagery and being able to almost automate like calculating things like impervious data sets and things like that. So, but today I'm going to focus mostly on RGB imagery and point clouds, as Bill was referring to earlier. Point clouds are a huge part of what we do. It's how we create our surveys. I'm going to focus on topographic survey deliverables today. This example right here, so generally when we're speaking about hybrid data, as Bill said, we're talking about using multiple systems, multiple different sensors to capture one data set that we think brings the most value to the project and to our client. So for example, like what you're seeing here, we believe that mobile LiDAR is going to bring us the level of detail that we want on a road, and it's also going to, say, capture underneath a bridge and things like that. But we know it isn't going to get underneath the water. So in this example you're seeing here, we brought in bathymetric information that I'll talk to you about. And then also we incorporated drone LiDAR because of vegetation and how offset some of these areas were from a drivable area. And I'm going to focus on a few things when it comes to hybrid data. And but I wanted to point out that towards the end of my presentation, I'm going to focus on 3 to 4 projects. I've kind of lumped project 2 and 3 into one because they're very similar. And it is one where we did some really neat structural analysis. But at the end of the day, when we sit down and we kick off a project, the mission planning is what's critical, and we evaluate a job and we see everything that's going on with it, and we try and select the best way to capture that project. Some scenarios that might come up that I wanted to focus on are angle of incident. I'm going to focus on that. Vegetation is always a discussion. We try and focus on our footprint. So if it's a large area, we might use, say, a manned aircraft versus a drone, depending on how wide of swath based on an altitude of data that we can collect. And then we also look into things like utilities and other level of detail things that maybe only a particular sensor can acquire because it needs to be closer to it. So when we talk angle of incident, a lot of that is about slope. It's also about things like underside of a bridge. Some of it's line of sight based. So it's much about, as you can see on this picture on the left, you've got an airborne system there, whether it's a drone or it can be a manned aircraft or a helicopter. Typically, those plug in really well when you have vegetation involved. So we're talking LiDAR right now, where we can penetrate down into the vegetation. And when it's offset from the road significantly, where mobile LiDAR, based on its setup, which I'll show you in a little bit, may not get as good angle to penetrate down to the bare earth. Because remember, at the end of the day with point clouds, which we'll talk about, we want to filter out the vegetation and we want to be left with the best representation as bare earth as we can. So angle of incidence really important to us. Another important topic is our footprint, as I mentioned before. So this is kind of where we're going to be thinking about what type of aerial tool we might use, and also what altitude we might want to fly at, and how many swaths we have to do, how much overlap we're going to try and do between each back and forth collection. So, as I mentioned, mission planning is critical to all this, and you try to go out there and be prepared for it. But sometimes you come across things that you didn't expect. Sometimes you cannot do a mission or a site visit, and you come across things like construction that wasn't in Google Earth when you did your virtual site visit. So one project I'm going to highlight today was here in Oklahoma City, where I'm out of, and there were some construction zones, and we were able to use multiple different types of geospatial acquisition to account for some walls and other types of things that we came across. So as you can see, the construction there, this wall. And so we did mobile LiDAR. I don't know how well you can see that faint red line on the left, but that's where we drove the mobile system. And then on the right, we took and you're seeing the point cloud on the right, that's where we went and took the terrestrial scanner. And so we blend all this data together, and we're able to build one complete point cloud, filling in all the holes. Because more and more, it's becoming common for geospatial professionals like ourselves to not just deliver a CAD product, which was the conventional delivery, but we also need to be providing the imagery and the point cloud to the client or the engineers, because they now are learning and have the abilities to leverage this data as well. Of course, we never miss anything as geospatial professionals, but this gives them the ability to verify some things and check maybe some additional information that may not have been in our standard CAD deliverable. I mentioned vegetation. I just wanted to point out that most of our systems have the ability to, when a laser pulses from the sensor, it has the ability to send multiple returns. So when it hits like a broadleaf or when it hits something, it can continue to push down into the vegetation. And typically you're going to split a minimum of 2 and many times as much as 4 or more than that even. So, and on my picture on the right here, what I'm trying to show you is I'm trying to compare what we're going to talk about a little bit is point clouds built from imagery and point clouds built from LiDAR. So if, I don't know how well you can see it, but the point cloud built, and so this is a cross section of there's some trees and there's a little channel cutting through there. So we're kind of looking through a profile or a cross section. So the green is based on imagery only, and the white, where there's more information down underneath those trees, that's based on LiDAR. This is a drone project that the structure from motion or the point clouds built from imagery was leveraged, but we also used LiDAR because we knew vegetation was going to be a problem. The structure from motion and the imagery-based collection is valuable to us, and I'll show you here in a little bit, because it gives us these amazing orthos, high-res aerials that we leverage to do top-down extraction. So another reason why you might use hybrid data is, let's say most of the job is conventional survey, traditional survey, or say it's an aerial job and maybe you need a higher level of detail with utilities or other features near the road that either terrestrial LiDAR or mobile LiDAR is going to give you. So those were just a few examples. I quickly want to hit on what we have here. So we're lucky that we in-house have the ability to leverage several different tools and try and plug the right ones in when it makes sense. So we have a mobile system that I'll highlight here for you. And one thing you'll notice about us is we're very vendor agnostic. I hope our vendors, which I think a few of them are listening today, I hope they appreciate that. But on the other hand, they probably wish we only bought from them. But it gives us the opportunity to make sure, we're using the right tool, because most of these vendors and their hardware also give you software that goes with it. And so sometimes we feel like maybe a particular vendor's software might use the data better than another, and so we'll kind of lean on these different programs that we have that came with the software. So we're very agnostic to that. We love our mobile mapper. We recently got it, and we've been putting it to good use. As far as terrestrial scanners that run on tripods, we have 4 of them. Again, kind of a spread of different vendors. We have a few that are kind of more interior focused, and also they're more close range scanners. And then we have a few that are more long range scanners where, depending on the terrain and safety, that we plug in the right ones there. So our drone LiDAR is, one thing we love about it is it's a hybrid in itself. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But so this is our drone system, our LiDAR system. You see that kind of Coke can there, that is the actual LiDAR sensor that spins. And then within that attached box is the IMU and some of the other parts that I'll talk about with the mobile system, but it's all kind of compact in that one system. And so one thing that we like about it is that we can take it off and we can put it on other things like a golf cart or an ATV or a vehicle, and we can plug it in different ways. It's very flexible, kind of a Swiss Army knife. On the imagery side of things, camera based, we have a lot of different drones. Right now, most of our drones are DJI focused. We'll see how that plays out, but that's where we've started our program. We started it 2 years ago, and we've had a lot of growth in these 2 years. But we've got several different drones, camera-based drones, and we see the value in what DJI has provided there. So that's where we are with that. Again, back to the mobile LiDAR, there's many things that it brings to us. One of the things that we really like about it is on the top there in the system there, you can see a little black box, and that's a Google Earth 360 light camera. I'm going to show you some data from that here in a second. And then you've got 2 missile like looking sensors there on the back. Those are the actual scanners. In this picture right here, it's more close up. There's a case over it there, so there's actually a glass sensor underneath there. I also wanted to focus on the DMI and the GAMs. These two products work well for us. So one of the projects I'm going to highlight for you is in downtown Oklahoma City, and there are significant buildings, and it's easy to lose GNSS solutions through there. And so both of these extra tools work together to help the system understand where it is if it loses its GPS solution, and it helps compensate for that. So there's this mobile system, and same with the other one, the drone one I showed you, has a lot of parts to it that help it understand. And the IMU, which I haven't talked much about, the inertial measurement unit, is probably the most important, where it's, if you go into a turn or if you hit a bump or something like that, it's calculating that jostling that the system's going under, and it's helping the data compensate on the back end and build out this 3D point cloud that we keep referring to. So a lot of reasons you might use mobile LiDAR. I'm going to highlight a couple. ADA compliance. So let's say you got a bunch of ramps in your municipality and you wanted to be able to evaluate them at a high level of accuracy and density. A tool like this is a great one. And then, and again, here's an example of Bill's data mining that he referenced. So I'm showing sign inventory and tree inventory, being able to, from that same data set where you did ADA checks on your ramps, you could also dive in and do asset management and gather all your trees or signs or something like that. So here's an example that DJ again threw together for us, where he's using Trimble's software. They're continuing to make great progress on this, and he's basically automating tree extraction. So it's seeing the trees, it's seeing their location, it's seeing their height, it's seeing their trunk width, and it's also seeing their I'm going to use the wrong term here, but the spread of the branches. So it's calculating all that and building it into a database for us. So, I mean, we're starting to see more and more tools like that, these automation tools. Software is really coming a long way. So to focus on terrestrial quickly, why might you use it? In my opinion, we love it on evaluating structures. So deformation of a structure, analysis of a structure. We've got a project going right now. We've had a few where there might be concerns that, you know, is it vertically constructed properly? Is there some lean going? Is there some twist? And I'll show you some of that on my project highlights here in a minute. But so the terrestrial scanner, because there's no movement going on with it, I would say it's going to always be your most accurate and typically the most dense data set that you're going to get. So we try and plug it in where it makes sense. We use it for interiors a lot. I just got a phone call that we'll be doing some more interior scanning. So that's where the terrestrial plugs in. So we, on the aerial side of things, that's where Bill's background is, and we don't own a helicopter or plane, but we have partners that we work with, and we always try and make a upfront fair evaluation on, you know, does this make sense, as opposed to trying to plug in a drone, and try and balance, you know, which the footprint and the level of detail that we need to get on the ground. You know, does it make sense using the drone or mobile versus using the aerial manned aircraft, and you'll see the helicopters plug in a lot on the things like transmission lines, where the utility company is really wanting to see some details on the poles that typically the manned aircraft wouldn't get. I'm even starting to see where some of them can do a good job on that though. So so drone LiDAR, I already hit on this, but again, so the flexibility of it, my next slide, I think I talk about that, where we put it on different things. I don't highlight this project for you guys today, but one of my favorites is a golf course where we flew photogrammetry and drone up above the canopies of the golf course, and there was enough tree coverage that we wanted to put the sensor on the golf cart, and then we drove around underneath all the canopies and built one hybrid data set. That actually may have been one of the first ones that we did here at Halff, was that golf course. Structure from motion, so building these point clouds from imagery, we love to plug that in. It's a good cost-effective way to do things. We have a lot of pilots at Halff. I think right now we have 12 licensed pilots. About half of those are flying fairly actively, and it's easier for us to send the bulk of them out to do an ortho or video or photogrammetric flight versus a LiDAR drone flight. The LiDAR drone is more specialized. So this definitely has its purpose, and we plug it in where we feel like it makes sense. Just some examples of things you might do here. So where the LiDAR and the drone really, to me, brings the most value is vegetated terrains that aren't drivable, long story short. And then we love the drone imagery for the orthos, which I'm going to show you guys here in a second. Bathymetry, I'm going to highlight a specific project, actually the one where these photos were brought in. We see the value in that, obviously, whenever it's needed. At this time, we rent it. We've got some other larger waterways where we're going to have to use a boat significantly more than this, and where it can do some multi-return scanning underneath the water. So we're growing in bathymetric, and I'm excited to show you guys what we did on one of these projects. So none of this is doable without our partners in survey. I work closely with Trevor here in Oklahoma City. We're the yin and yang. He keeps me grounded, literally. I just can't emphasize enough that although there may be times where geospatial is purely for GIS information, we focus right now on topographic acquisition. And so we're partners with our surveyors, and we every day are trying to get better at having a good workflow and good communication to avoid trips out in the field. Because that's one of the biggest benefits of geospatial acquisition, is that you're gathering everything in the field and bringing it back with you. So if there's areas that either are line of sight issues because of walls or things like that, we're continually trying to work with our surveyors to make sure they're confident and making decisions out in the field on that initial trip when they're out setting control and doing ground truthing and things like that. So speaking of control and ground truthing, Aubrey, who is our leader on the mobile mapper, is really focused on making sure, and I'm trying to credit Trimble here, and I'm trying to credit anyone on the stuff I use, but so I've used some snapshots from Trimble here of different types of control, and in their opinion, which ones bring the most value to their specific sensor that we're using. And I don't know how well you can see it in the bottom right corner, but we are leaning heavily towards the checkerboard type layout. And the reason why I use this image is I really wanted to drive home what Aubrey and I have been talking about, is the angle of incident, again, like we talked about earlier, and how it hits that checkerboard, the black and white. So you've got white paint and black paint on the ground. You're setting a template and you're painting this. This is on the shoulder of the road. So the mobile mapper is driving past it. It's scanning this. It's seeing the intensity here. And based on the angle of incident, there's a particular recommendation on how you lay out this control. And I just wanted to focus on that. So our other sensor, the Swiss Army knife sensor, it scans perpendicular to the road, like the red lines you're seeing there. So what I want to point out here is, maybe depending on how your mobile sensor is directed and the angle that it's going to hit the control point is how you want to rotate your control point, is the main thing that I wanted to point out on lesson learned here. I've got some other things like zipper method. So let me see if I can show you that. So here's like some examples of what that, I know it's kind of hard to see, it's faint, but what those different types of control points are going to look like and which ones bring the most value, you know, depending on what you're trying to do. So for the drone flights, we love the tarps. The tarps that are shown there are not the ones we like. I think I might have one picture in here that I can show you guys in a little bit, but we have a specific tarp that we really like that was recommended by our vendor, that if you guys, if you want to reach out to me, I can point you in the right direction on, because that's obviously critical, is that can you see these point clouds well in the registration software? Can you see control well and find that control point? Sorry, I'm trying to click here. All right. So just some more examples of control points. So here you're seeing more imagery-based control. The ones with the white squares and the black circles are pretty close to the ones that we're using for our drones now, both for photogrammetry and for our LiDAR acquisition. And then I want to talk a little bit about, you know, layouts of control points, whether it's zipper method or, you know, table method. They're both necessary. So on a mobile collection like you're seeing here, the circles represent control points. The X's are what they're showing as ground truthing here. We balance that. You know, we try and evaluate how much GNSS outages do we feel we're going to have. You know, are we driving under tunnels? Are we driving in an urban canyon around a bunch of buildings, or are there a lot of trees around us? So, you know, here they're showing spacing at 1,000 feet and truthing every 500 feet. So, you know, you kind of have to balance that based on what your site is. And some of that is, again, on the field crews to be evaluating their GNS solutions out in the field. That's something that they can see. And so if we feel like we need to get more truthing or something in a specific area, we can do that. Because in many ways, we use the truthing not just to verify our data, but if we ever feel like our horizontals are hitting well, but our verticals need some additional adjustments, you can lean on that truthing to do some additional vertical corrections. Because as all the surveyors on this know, typically your horizontals you get better results on those than your verticals. So we focus on both, obviously, but the verticals are ones where you really have to sometimes do some additional adjustments. So here's just a quick example of table method and how you may lay out a drone flight. So the red, I'm showing kind of your buffer zone, and then the yellow are control points and how you might lay something like that out. One thing I'll say on aerial acquisition, really any acquisition, is I always try and drive home, like, obviously you should have control encompassing data that's valuable to you. Like never should we have our control pulled in too tight to where we want, where we need data outside of our control zone. You know, as I mentioned, Bill comes from the aerial side of things, so we're starting to use photo IDs more and more. That's more from the manned aircraft side of things, but we see value in utilizing existing features out there in the scan data as control points. Just quickly, some of our tools have really great smart pickers and things like that, where you can build a template and it will find that template in your registration software. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on accuracies, but this is just kind of a rough my feel on when we're doing a job here at Halff, different levels of accuracy that we should expect from different types of sensors and vehicles. So towards the bottom there, the finest accuracy, you're going to see terrestrial. And as you start to introduce movement, you know, your accuracy's back off. But none of that, and I say there, given light control methods, none of that, it goes back to our boots on the ground surveyors that we depend on. None of that is doable without good control. You know, control is king. I think I'm going to talk briefly about that here in a second, but you know, depending on whether or not you're running levels and it all is based on your scope and your accuracy requirements. So a few examples of the different softwares that we use. So this is on our mobile stuff, the software. And so that's showing your mobile trajectories, your drive paths and things like that. And so you'll pull your trajectories into your registration software. So you're kind of seeing where the drive lines were, and then you're seeing control points. And then you go into that and you tie down the control inside the point cloud. So here's an example of terrestrial scanning. And I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a control point sitting on a tripod type of device there. And so you'll introduce X, Y's, and Z's, and you'll tie down this rigid body terrestrial scan. And that's Reg 360. And then our drone LiDAR USA system, here's the trajectory software that they use, that we use with them on our mobile LiDAR systems. And then we bring into their control software, and we see things like this. This is a control point that we would see, and then you would go pick that moment of the control point, and you're assigning that XYZ that the surveyor gave you to tie that down. So similarly, on the orthos and photogrammetry, Pix 4D, you're going to get your XYZs from your surveyor, like you're seeing there. Those are all different, your point shot numbers and your XYZs. And then you're going to go and you're going to see that moment on the control point, and you're going to click on that and tie down your control that way. So one of our collaboration tools with our conventional surveyors is this, what was started by NSSDA. I'm not spelling NSSDA there properly, but on the national side of things, they built this, and here locally in Oklahoma and other DOTs are leveraging that to have in their states. So Oklahoma has implemented this tool, and what this tool is the conventional folks will go out and they'll stake out and shoot say 20 different shots across a project, and they'll bring those points back into us. They're not necessarily control points. They're just kind of random, let's call it, points. And at the end of the project, when we build a triangle file, which I'll show you here momentarily, there we are evaluating the air, the vertical air against that surface model to see the quality of that surface. So moving forward, so I can get into our example projects, one thing I wanted to say, your topo, your surface is never going to be any better than your people doing the extraction. And so here's a great example of our extraction people saying, hey, I don't feel like I'm going to be able to get a good flow line of that ditch because it's underwater, because LiDAR can't see through water. So we need to have our boots on the ground people help us there and go and get conventional shots and help us fill that in. So quickly, I want to move into our projects. So this one is one here in Oklahoma that Trevor and I and the team are working on, a large project. It lays out about 10.5 miles, but by the time you apply all the drive lanes that we did on mobile LiDAR, and you can kind of see that on the red lines, you're looking at about 75 lane miles of collection and data extraction. We used photo IDs for a bulk of that, so we didn't have to set a lot of control on top of that. And how it was hybrid is we use terrestrial systems and we use drones. And let me show you how we leverage that data. So another example of hybrid data is the imagery that is collected from our mobile mapper. And so you can see here the DTM that was generated by our team, and it laid with the Google Earth-like imagery and the value that these 3D models bring. So high level of detail on the sidewalks and stairs going up there. So here's a top-down view. So that same CAD model that we're seeing there, now we're seeing a top-down view of it, and now we're leveraging that high-res ortho that we're getting from our drone flights, which, by the way, I'm proud on this and on all projects that we do all we can on the safety stuff. And on this one, we did not fly over roads. So our pilots do a great job of acquiring the data in a way that's safe to the public. So we're not flying over roads, and we're staying in public right away on these acquisitions. But the processor is able to leverage this high res ortho along with the point cloud data, which I'll show you here in our next project example. So there's the DTM derived from it. Here's a neat shot of both the top down and the imagery from the mobile mapper and the CAD files extracted from it. You're seeing the drone ortho. So we're kind of blending the drone and the mobile data all together. Another example here of that drone data on the left and our mobile data on the right and how it all comes together. I like this screenshot DJ put together. So you're seeing, you know, from the image clad lines all the way to the DTM surface model that we turn in as a topo. So on that same project I showed you earlier, but I just want to show you again where we've done a hybrid of mobile and terrestrial at that construction site. So here's kind of a 30,000 foot view of part of that BRT project here in Oklahoma City. And it was an exciting one for us. Quickly, I want to hit some structural analysis hybrid data that we've done. So on these structures, we're scanning with terrestrial because, again, I feel that's the highest level of accuracy we can get because we're doing finite analysis. We're really looking for twisting and leaning and making sure these structures are safe and as designed. So I'm going to go back here. We use terrestrial scanning for the bulk of it, but then we bring in mobile and drone data to acquire line of sight issues like on top of the structures that maybe we can't see. Some more structure examples, a lot of mobile data there. So we're modeling these structural models. There's another example of those same models. And then we're building these Excel spreadsheets, and we're applying different rules to it to where we're showing which structures are leaning worse than others, twisting, and giving our clients the ability to dive in and drill into specific structures and make sure they're how they want. So last project, as I wrap up here. So this is an example of, say, a utility project. Client brings it forward to us. We do some mission planning. We see there's a lot going on here. You got vegetation. Although it's a small footprint project, unlike the BRT, there's vegetation issues, water, as I mentioned. You got an underpass of a bridge that they wanted information on, a lot going on. We lay out our control. That's what those ATs are there that you see. We do, so field people go out, we shoot our control, we do some ground truthing that we know we're going to have to get because of vegetation. We want to verify bare earth in those areas. We go out, we do our field acquisition. On this, we used, as I show there, mobile. We used drone for the ortho. We use drone LiDAR. We use bathymetric, and we use conventional data. So 5 different versions of acquisition data on this. And we register all that. I showed you that in the past. So I gave you a quick preview of how we register things. And then we get the cloud and the ortho. And before we start extracting, we met with the engineer. The engineer says, hey, I know you acquired a lot, but you know, I want to focus on a specific area of this project. So we drill into a specific area. Wanted to show you the high-res orthos and how much quality. So that's like a standard ortho, and that's what we're getting from these drones. And that's after it's even been reduced a little bit. There I'm showing you tying it to survey control. I don't know how you can see that, but there is the ortho tied to survey control. So this example, the red is drone LiDAR. The purple that you kind of faintly see there is bathymetric, and the green is mobile LiDAR. And we also have conventional data in there as well. So here's a zoomed in view of that same thing. So right there at the water, you got a lot of different data sets going together. So now I'm showing you us cutting a cross section. There's a railroad bridge right there. So we cut a cross section through that. And I don't know how well you guys can see it in this platform, but the red is the drone, and the green is the mobile, and how well it's tying all together. And then you've got the purple bathymetric data all in this view. Kind of a similar view, just zoomed in. We've also got conventional data there. There's a check shot there, but we're also using their data to fill in some little void regions where we want additional data. Another view of that top-down cross-section cut through there. So you're seeing kind of this mold of all these different data sets at this one location. To me, this was pretty neat. I was putting this together for you guys. So the drone flew right where that black line just came in. It's flying there. That's the red data. The mobile drove on this green road over here. the drone is 123 feet away approximately from this structural piece of that bridge, and the mobile is 213 feet away roughly from that. And on the right is the cross section of that. And you guys can't see it very well here because I'm looking at what you are, but those fall right into each other. And it gives us the ability to, the drone can see the top step of that structural piece as where the mobile can see the side of it better. So by leveraging these different data sets, we can model even from 200 feet away from that structure. So very happy about the results there. So quickly wanted to show you, here's an example of where the mobile's coming down the road, but it can't drive any further. So the green is mobile. Now I'm cutting a cross section for you there on the right. And then the red is all the drone LiDAR that we pulled. The purple is again the bathymetric. And so once we get all this data, it's kind of hard to see, but I've filtered it to bare, I've classified it there. So we've got vegetation and bare earth going on, and we rip out the vegetation and we're left only with the bare earth ground of the point cloud. And at that point, we can classify it and contour it. So you're kind of seeing bare earth contours there. And from that point, once we get that bare earth surface, that's where we can start doing all of our CAD extraction, like what I was able to show you on that BRT job earlier. So you can see the models that were derived here. And then if we jump back over to where the water is, you can see how well the bathymetric and the LiDAR all blended together to build a really good topo there at the creek. And so here we are back to our initial point of a hybrid data set. So Bill, do you want to dive back in and kind of close out here for us?
Yeah, thanks very much, Rusty, for getting through that, and thanks everybody. I know we covered a lot of areas real fast there. I think we had a few questions here that we wanted to take a look at, and I'm kind of taking a look at those here real quick, folks, so I can see what we've got. One of the questions is, Rusty, is how are we able to capture the aerial mapping without flying over the road, just shooting at an angle?
Good question. So just like there's a lot of software vendors for registration that I showed, there's also a lot of drone mapping providers out there. And a few of them I'm excited to see part of their mission planning that they're helping you automate your flights is you give them the road location, you give them this buffer, and they're helping you build out where the drone needs to be at different altitudes to get enough overlap, because that's the key. And I didn't get into that today, but the key is that your imagery has enough overlap that it can all stitch together properly. So yeah, we were able to fly over, let's say, the sidewalks on both sides of the road. And since we were up at a good altitude, we had plenty of overlap to build one data set.
Okay, another one that's a little bit similar to that, but it's a good way to talk about here. It says there are vehicles in the orthos. How are you able to gather the drone data while still being compliant with 107 restrictions?
So we're not flying over the road as far as 107 compliance. So yeah, that one of the big rules, which we didn't get into 107 and safety and compliance, is not flying over people. So our focus in, and we had a job recently where we were flying in an area where there were public, and so we have multiple people out on site. So we typically go try and, if there are people there, we go have a conversation with them, and before we do any acquisition, we try and make sure we're doing it in a way that we're not flying over public. And then as far as roads go, like I said, we do not fly over roads. The only time we've flown over roads is when it's like in a rural situation where there's not vehicles present, where we feel like we're safe flying over roads. But that's an important thing for us, is to not be, not only do we not want a situation where the drone is to fall over on the road, but we are trying to do all we can to not be a distraction to the drivers as well. So we try and be at a specific altitude where the drone is not a distraction to the drivers.
Yeah, and that's also one of the things that we put into the planning of the missions, as Rusty alluded to, is that, we look at the different types of data collection methods that are available to us. We run a cost analysis on them, and just kind of drill down to see which one is going to be best for the project. And so in some cases, we might opt out of using the drone just because of issues like that. There might be, a lot of folks around, or there might be a lot of traffic around that it's hard to get away from.
No, that's we had a job last week, Bill, where we didn't fly the drone because it was not safe to do it. So yeah, that is common. That's true.
Yeah. We've got one here. Does bathymetric give you top edge of water or flow line true?
So that bathymetric system we're using right there is got a GPS sensor at the boat, and it's essentially using sonar to find the bottom, and it's calculating that difference and giving us a conventional shot. So you're basically getting a timed, as the boat's moving around, it's taking a shot every couple of seconds, and it's calculating the difference between, what it would hit, like almost a fish finder type tool, and applying that difference to the GPS, conventional GPS system like we would do on the ground. I don't know if I'm answering that question well, but.
Yeah, and we use a lot of times we'll use some conventional methods to get down to that edge of water to make sure that we got that accurately. Yeah.
So it's flow line. It's the natural ground underwater. So
yeah. Yep. And then what software would you recommend for drone mapping? Good one.
Yeah. So right now we've been using Drone Deploy, but God, if I had my pilots on here, they'd be kicking me because they've got a few other favorites that they like, but we've recently been using Drone Deploy, and one reason why I'll plug them is because I like that they have that new tool where you build your buffer in, so you're not flying over the road, but you're getting enough overlap to build out your data set like you want. We also really like Leachy is one I'll promote we use it for our LiDAR mapping system. So we've got a few different ones. We use DJI's also, their ground station. So.
And one more here, and this is about beyond visual line of sight. So how far away are you sending the drones? Are you using beyond visual line of sight yet? We didn't get into this today, but that's one of the main rules. We do not fly beyond visual line of sight. We have not to this time applied for the waiver to fly beyond visual line of sight. It's something, it's a goal of ours at some point, but at this time, if we've been in that type of situation, we're either going with a manned aircraft like we talked about before, because, say it's 65 miles and we just think the manned aircraft makes more sense. Or when we're out in the field, like our pilot Ashley made a decision last week where she thought from our office mission planning that we would be able to fly that, and because of safety, she made a decision not to go beyond visual line of sight, and so we stood down on that part of the project, and we had our boots on the ground surveyors go pick up that area for us. So we're always trying to do all we can to be safe as far as flying over areas and also not flying beyond visual line of sight. Those are critical things to us. So. All right, and then one more last one here that popped in, and this is with regard to bathymetric data. What is the restriction for sonar acquisition for river current? What can the boat handle?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rusty. I'll let you grab it if you want. Or I can do it too.
And one reason I didn't dig too deep into bathymetry is because right now we're not as good at that, just long story short, as we are some of these other things, but we're starting to get into it. I would say that system I showed you, you don't want to be doing much more than, I don't think that river had much flow to it at all. That same system we've used on ponds and lakes where there's no movement. But yeah, I can't tell you current flow, but Bill and I are looking at a few jobs near the coast where we are definitely not going to be able to use a system like that. So.
Exactly. We're looking at collecting some data that's going down into the intercoastal waterway. So you got to have to get a bigger boat for that. So, all right, that looks like all the questions that we have here. And it looks like we're at our time. So I want to thank everybody on behalf of Rusty and myself for letting us here, and especially to the InterDrone folks for inviting us to to be part of this. We've enjoyed it. And I'm sure that if you have some additional questions for us, you can get them to the folks at InterDrone, and they can get it to us as well, or get our contact information. You can get directly with them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. Big thank you to our speakers, Bill and Rusty. And if you want access to this webinar recording in the future, you can actually just use the link that you used today to log in. It should be available within about an hour or so. And we're looking forward to seeing you at the next webinar.